My name is Greg, and I'm with my colleagues Jim and Joel because we are pumped. We're excited about sharing with you a couple of things that we hope will be very, very helpful to you, as we're presuming that everyone who's on the line today is in church leadership of some kind, whether volunteer staff or other. But we're going to talk about this whole idea of to just ask. The title of our webinar is about asking questions to gain information from your congregation. So this is the team that's on with you today. You may or may not be able to see us on the Zoom windows, but Jim Randall is our co-founder CEO. I'm the guy in the middle talking to you right now, and then Joel, also research lead for this whole kind of new idea called Auxano Assessments. But Jim, Auxano's been doing this kind of stuff for a long time, but we just kind of kicked it into a new gear. So kind of greet everybody and tell us why the new gear for Auxano Assessments.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and good morning, Greg. Thanks for hosting us and walking us through. And we are super excited about today. And you're exactly right, Auxano. We've been for almost 2 decades now, been walking alongside ministry leaders and pastors like yourself, and really helping to survey hundreds of congregations for, like I said, almost 20 years. And I think one of the things that if we haven't learned by now, or if you haven't learned by now, I know this is something that was a big breakthrough for me, is that, leaders that are effective, they really learn the art of asking great questions. And so I think the thing that I'm so stoked about with Auxano Assessments is we're creating a tool for leaders to be able to ask those questions. We really have honed that process of asking questions. And quite frankly, Greg, that's where Auxano Assessments are going to come in. And I can't wait for us to talk a little bit more about these kind of 5 revelations that we can glean from surveying our congregations.
Absolutely. And before we get into the nitty gritty, just one more person I want you to meet, and that is Joel Tompkinson. Joel, you're the guy that's actually boots on the ground and doing this day in, day out. Just give us a quick download on why you have seen this work, or why it's so exciting for you to be able to help in this way.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Well, it helps that I'm an integrator by personality, by wiring, and I also feel like I have the gift of helps. So I've always wanted to just help. And in this particular instance with our Auxano Assessments, I'm able to help pastors gain clarity and to understand their people better and to lead more effectively. And so I love the opportunity to jump in the weeds of all this, and to have church leaders get excited by some of the insights that we're able to uncover to help them to be more effective. And so it's a personal calling. It's also just a delight to get in there with the church.
Well, again, we want to welcome you, and we know that you have probably done a Zoom call or two, so we don't need to give you too many instructions, but we love the use of the chat box for one thing that is very fun for us, and that is let us know who you are and where you're Zooming in from. So name, city, and state, and then also, of course, ask anything, because we have a colleague by the name of Bob who is fielding those questions, and he will make sure that if we have time, and I think we will at the end, we'll address any specific questions you have about what we're about to talk about. So just to make it really clear, Auxano Assessments, though we have done it before, we're now branding it and promoting it, pushing it forward as one of the divisions of Auxano's help to churches that specifically crafts custom surveys so that church leaders can understand where their congregation is at more effectively. There's a lot of reasons that you would choose to do a survey like this, and we'll get into both those reasons as well as the benefits and even how it's done, so that by the time you leave the call today, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. Now, whether or not you want to use one of these tools or not is completely up to you and your situation. But our goal today is for you to at least be exposed to the process. So that's really what it is. So just so you know, I and Joel, who you just met, and then another guy by the name of Dan, who helps us with a lot of the design work and the creation of these surveys, both digital and in print. We're the guys that head up the new Auxano Assessments team. So we're launching it basically today with this webinar. And we're hoping that a lot of our friends and other leaders that know Auxano will now know Auxano for a very new reason and a new division, and that is Auxano Assessments. Okay, so here's where we want to get into just giving you the goodies, right? So we know you know surveys. Maybe many of you have even done them before, of course, but we feel like what we've really tried to figure out is how to ask the right questions, which is what Jim said. And then what we get from this are 5 major categories of fruit that we want to talk to you about, and then maybe have you ask questions of us about. So the first one is just buy-in, the buy-in of the congregation. And I think you know what that means, but we'll talk about that specifically in a few minutes. And then the gaps, like where we're missing it, the challenges that people are facing, the concerns that people have, and then very sort of the optimistic part of this is the opportunities we have to adjust the sails on our ministry if need be, to be able to scratch where it itches, to be able to shape programming and discipleship in a manner that actually is effective for the congregation that God has asked us to lead. So I think we're going to Jim first. Is that right, Jim? We're going to talk about.
I'll actually take it
Joel?
to the buy-in.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Joel, you're on, buddy.
Thanks. Before I actually get into buy-in, let me just say, if you're watching this, we're going to make all these slides available to those who've pre-registered. It's going to go right out here. So don't feel like you have to take notes real quick, because we'll make sure that they get into your hands. So buy-in, when we talk about buy-in, really there's always things that as leaders we're looking out on the horizon, trying to understand where is the Spirit moving us, what makes sense for our congregation and our context, and so maybe it's some future plans. We're asking the question, does your congregation buy into where the leadership wants to go, whether it is future plans, whether it's some projects that we feel, whether it's a capital project or if it's church planting, or if it's we want to get involved in some type of missional activity, global partnership maybe, or perhaps it's just a change directionally in where the church has been going. It's hard to gauge whether they've bought in unless you ask them. At what point in undergoing a major change do you want to find out if your congregation is with you or not? Do you want that partway through, or do you want to try to understand and assess their level of leaning forward with the leadership prior to? And so that's one of the benefits of asking the question, of just asking, is potentially determining their buy-in. And so really the benefit to church leaders is the opportunity to gain congregational support. While we want to be out in front of our people, we also don't want to be too far in front of our people. And so the purpose of our assessments, our surveys, and the reporting on those is hopefully to allow the leader to not get too far ahead, so that he or she loses credibility, so that the congregation, you learn after the fact that the congregation wasn't with you going into it. And so there's really the buy-in is one of the key valuable takeaways or payoffs of an assessment.
I think it'd be good to mention now, Joel, that one of the ways we get a really good beat on this, and I know you're going to talk about it later in the tactical side, but I want to say right up front, I think all of our surveys are anonymous. And so this is something where we care a ton about raw and candid and honest feedback. And we don't care as much about who said it at this point, because we can kind of analyze that with you and make sure that those are legitimate things. But that's why we get very high response rates, very high candor, which is why we're so excited about how helpful it is to church leaders. Okay, let's keep going. This is you, Mr. Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about the gaps in understanding. And so, listen, here's reality for us, right? We're 1 year into the global pandemic, and there has never been a wider gap between what you as pastor, what we as pastors and ministry leaders think we know, in other words, our perception, and what's actually going on, reality, in the headspace of our congregation. And so just to be super clear, a part of the reason why, and we're going to be sharing a little bit more with you about this shortly, is really helping you to address some of these major regathering, re-engagement issues around the pandemic. So hang in here with us. We want to really, quite frankly, provide you with a tool to help you with that. We want to give some kind of principle background that leads up to that. And, here's the reality for those gaps. Let's just be honest. People in our congregation and in our community have never been more scattered away from our body in Christ than ever before. I mean, our congregations are completely on a call yesterday with a gentleman pastor in Indianapolis, Indiana, and they are meeting for their first in-person worship service this coming weekend. So for an entire year, his congregation has been scattered. So, congregations are scattered. And listen, as ministry leaders and pastors, we've been isolated. So that gap is real because our people have been scattered, we've been isolated, and we start to lose touch. And so we're sitting here kind of stressed, worrying about what the future of church is going to be like, what's regathering going to look like. And for some of us, we're pretty nervous about what that's going to look like next. And so, you see that really we've got to address what are our leadership priorities going to be in moving forward. Are we going to continue to put programs over people? I'm not saying that many of us would admit that, but that's pretty much what we've done historically. Are we going to start to make an actual shift to put people over programs? Are we going to continue to be a come and see church? Or are we going to all of a sudden truly make those difficult decisions and to become a go and tell church, right? Is it going to be more about biblical community? Are we going to put the focus on biblical community? Is community and city impact only a pandemic opportunity for us? So many churches have responded to their community and in their city over the last year, but then as soon as we get right. So these are leadership priorities that, quite frankly, we've kind of gotten a different perspective on in the last year. And so really we want to ask, how is your church moving forward? We're gonna make available to you at the end of this webinar our Church Next survey. And a part of that is going to help you address the relationship and how you may move forward with in-person worship, in-person groups, online worship, online groups. How's that going to look moving forward? It's going to help you to think what's in the minds of your people. Are they ready to really have a kind of a missional reorientation? Is the church ready for a missional reorientation where we're looking at things different? Are we going to actually do something different about our disciple making, right? What's going on in our kids' student ministry? So ability for how is our church moving forward is a key aspect, not just of the Church Next survey, but of all the surveys that we do to help a pastor leader think through that. And here's the bottom line, and we can debate this long and hard, but we really have been challenged in the last year to define what ministry success is. Because if you're like me, it has been, or if you're like many pastors and leaders, it's been focused primarily on numerical growth and not necessarily on spiritual growth. We get so caught up in sometimes what we call at Auxano the input results that we don't put the attention on the output results. Like we're good at counting things, but we're not great at seeing the difference that it makes in someone's lives, right? We're really good at teaching principles and things to help people understand, but we're not necessarily great at multiplying disciples. So what surveys will help us to do is it really will help us to bridge the gap, to shorten that gap, to erase the gap that's between ministry leaders, pastors, and the congregations that they lead. And what do we gain? The bottom line, what do we gain? We gain the ability to have clarity and unity. We gain that ability to have clarity and unity. So I love the buy-in that happens that we can get, that Joel talks about. I love the gaps that are just a part of what we glean and what we get. But it all comes with challenges, right, Greg?
Yeah. So one of the things that we uncover, and I love what Jim said, because the urgency around this, I think, is very, very high. And so one of the things we uncover is, what are the challenges that people perceive right now? Like, it's really trying to almost, in a way, sit over a cup of coffee with a member of the congregation and saying, hey, what are you facing? Like, what are the things that feel like obstacles, either in your life or more specifically in our ministry? I was just having a conversation with my wife, who is on staff at our church, and she was saying that one of the frustrations is what used to work in a ministry, it was almost a slam dunk pre-pandemic, is not working anymore. And it's almost like leaders are the last to the party sometimes, because the congregation's like, hey, y'all, this isn't working, but you keep trying it. And so that's why we try to bridge that gap, because I think people have a pretty good bead on where the ministry is struggling, and maybe what we could change about our approach. One of the things too is we can uncover external pressures. What I mean by that is not internal things like what's happening inside the church, but what is coming to bear on the church. Obviously, we had a huge example of that over the last 12 months. That was an external pressure, right? We didn't bring it on ourselves, but it came to us in a big way. External pressures like some of the culture and race things, even some of the economic things that may be an external pressure. Again, I think it's just, we learn this stuff because a lot of the pastors that we work with are obviously some of the smartest people we've ever met, but it feels like maybe there's a delay. And so we're trying to shorten the delay of when you learn these things so that you can make adjustments and be agile and adaptable in what is going to be a year of a lot of adaptation. So what are the external pressures? Where's the confusion? Where do people not understand what we're prioritizing? And we get that, man. They're so honest, because they love their church. If they didn't love the church, they wouldn't even take the survey. But they take the survey because they care about the church and its future. So they're going to say things like, hey, I don't get this. I don't understand why we chose to do this ministry or stop this ministry or go this strategic direction. And so again, we're just like collectors of it, right? And we bring it back to you and sit it on your desk and say, hey, pastor, let's talk about this. Why could there be some confusion in this area? And so when it comes to this area, the challenges area, we're basically doing a reality check. We're saying, look, regardless of how optimistic we are, how much we're praying about, the future of the church, which are two really good things, optimism and prayer, we also need a heavy dose of reality. Like, where are the challenges? Some have said that leadership is defining reality and then offering hope in light of that reality. So we're helping with the first part of that, which is the reality check. Let's keep going with what the benefit of Auxano Assessments is. People's concerns.
Yeah, and Greg, a lot of those concerns are often unspoken. They'll have the concerns among if it's a couple, they'll share that with each other. They might share it with their small group, their life group, but oftentimes somebody doesn't want to schedule a meeting with a church leader and to look them in the eye. Now we understand you get those people who are verbal, but oftentimes the concerns are unspoken, and there are things that weigh heavily on their minds about their own life, about their spiritual hurdles that they are experiencing, where they need help being discipled and shepherded. There are also a lot of opportunities for tension and strife within a spiritual family with one another, within their families. And so those are concerns that weigh on their minds. And then the concern of connection and how engaged are they in our church? Are they just showing up? Are they just attending a live stream? Are they just sitting in a chair in an auditorium, or are they actually engaged in the body of Christ? And so one of the benefits of all of this process of asking our people questions is to be able to provide better pastoral care and to try to understand what's holding our people back. What is it is there something in their life that we can shepherd them in? What does spiritual engagement, what does spiritual health and discipleship look like in their life? It's not like we have cracked the code on how to actually quantify spiritual formation and discipleship, but we have our goal is to help to equip pastors in shepherding and resourcing their people, and we have some great questions, we think, in some of our surveys that get at spiritual health and vitality, both in the personal, individual between God and me, but also in the engagement with our church. And so one of our surveys, for example, Greg talks about how do we understand a congregant's engagement to our church, and why or why not, and how have they been in the past, particularly in this pandemic. It's interesting to ask the question, were you involved before? Maybe why not? And are you planning to be involved in a particular ministry or initiative? And give us some feedback on that. So understanding concerns so that we can respond both in as shepherds, but also so that it helps us to align our discipleship pathway to best equip and help our people to grow.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to make two clarifying comments. One of them is this. This is not a sort of soft leadership, like sticking your finger in the wind, diplomacy kind of populist thing. Like, let's just find out what the people want and then we'll adjust accordingly. That's not what we're doing. With the folks that are on our team, we're talking about 20, 30, 40-year ministry professionals that will help you interpret the answers to the questions, both with an ear toward discerning the Lord's direction for your church, as well as a listening ear toward the congregation. So they're not leading the church, but for us to lead when they're not following just seems like foolishness. So it really is that distinction. It's way more nuanced than just saying, what do the people want? That's not the point at all. The second point I want to make to this is, Joel, I love like Barna and Lifeway Research. Like I subscribe to those because I love getting that feedback. And they're doing some really great stuff with what Jim Randall would call kind of macro level assessment of the church. So they'll do like that. Totally needed. I mean, again, I love it. We use it for our consulting. But what we're talking about here, just to make the distinction, is we're not doing macro level. We're doing literally your church, your people, custom to your language. And Joel will show you how he does that with you. But one of the first things we do is actually ask, how do you say this at your church? So it's not like this generic, dear occupant kind of, approach, but it's specific to even your theology, your culture, and your language. And so I just wanted to make those two distinctions, that we're not sticking our finger in the wind, and we're not doing a very generic or general survey. We're doing one that's zoned right in or honed right in on your church. And so that's why we get excited about the opportunities that this creates or generates for churches, because what I would say is there is gold in this feedback loop. I mean, when you get people to be honest about it, most of the pastors we work with will just get super geeked out on this feedback, because they're like, oh man, now I know how to adjust or what to do or what to change. Whereas before they were flying a little bit blind. And again, they're good people and they're listening to God and all that good stuff. But now they've got this like super good, they find out where the low hanging fruit is. And they're like, oh my gosh, we can change that. That's easy. And that's totally in line with, helping our mission. Or now that I know what the concerns are of the community, we have good people that can address those concerns. And by the way, what we realize is, maybe you started your church as the original founder 30 years ago, or maybe you came as the leader 3 years ago. I don't even care if you came a year ago. The needs are different today than they were even a year ago. And they're definitely different than they were 10 and 20 and 30 years ago. So without doing some reconnaissance, without just asking, you will have a hard time kind of navigating the future. And we believe that we're often discovering easy fixes. Now, some of it's more complicated and it requires change management or adjustments over sometimes even years. But sometimes when we discover things in these assessments, we're like, oh man, we can have that done by the end of the month, or certainly by the end of the quarter. And so we always get very excited when just asking produces an easy fix. And so for us, this is about ministry wins. This is about encouraging people that may feel discouraged. This is about showing the congregation that leaders are responsive and listeners and can make adjustments when necessary. And man, if there was ever a time where we need a ministry win, it's now. And so we just love the idea that maybe we could help you all out with this kind of stuff. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about this. Joel, do you want to do this one, or how are we going to handle this one?
Yeah, sure. I can essentially what I want to share, Greg, I guess, in this is talking about a few of the different, let's do it together then.
Yeah, sure.
A few of the different categories. So I already talked about, when I talked about some of the concerns and how do we pastorally help them to grow. So we do have a couple of surveys that get at more measuring someone's spiritual life and asking about their own growth and maturity. But that looks a little different, Greg, than how are you just growing through our church, right? There's a difference between the two of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's some that are about individuals. There's others that are about engagement with church. I want to say too, just in case you're at a church where you know you need an infusion of generosity and financial capital. Hey, just so you know, we're not even talking about this today, but there's a group of consultants that together have run hundreds and hundreds of capital and generosity campaigns. And just a little sort of sidebar here, we actually ran some during the pandemic that were very successful. 2 of them outstripped their target, et cetera. So a little commercial for that. But let me tell you this, we don't do anything related to money without partnering with Auxano Assessments and having us go in and assess the generosity temperature. Are people even willing to support something? And we're not going to just cramp it down their throats. We're going to make sure that the Lord is moving in them, just like the Lord is moving in the leaders for kind of a generosity thing. And then Joel, this post-pandemic stuff seems like it's top of mind for everybody, right?
Yeah, it is. What do we do that we did before? What do we bring back here a year or so later? What do we not do? What's not important? Interestingly, in my own church, we had such inroads with the community. We engaged our community and supporting people that we didn't necessarily pay attention to before. And so there's some cool opportunities and avenues for ministry there to continue to demonstrate to them we care, we see you, we love you, we're for you, that we didn't have the opportunity for that before. And so sometimes asking what's your heart being led toward, the people that you're led toward here out of the pandemic, that would be something that I would be interested in knowing as a pastor, as well as some of the ministries that we had before. What concerns do you have? How do you want to engage? The name of this webinar was Just Ask, and so we're calling our completely custom assessments Just Ask. In other words, you may have something as a leader where you're particularly interested in drilling down and figuring out how your people feel about something, or you've been you feel like the Spirit is giving you something for the future, and you want to test that out and you want to discern that. And so not only do we have some surveys that we have already run multiple times with many churches over years, but we're also open to praying through and developing customizing questions that would be specific to what you feel like as a leader you're being asked to step into next.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of our colleagues, Clint, is actually custom developing a survey around spiritual growth and vitality, spiritual disciplines, because the church he's working with just wants to know, are people praying, right? Or are people really witnessing verbally to their neighbors and friends about Christ? And we tend to shy away from measuring those kinds of things because it can feel to some people like it's being legalistic, and yet that's not the point of it. And the other thing is again, it's anonymous. And so we're not saying, hey, Frank, are you doing such and such, in a way that feels heavy-handed. We're literally asking hundreds of people at a time to answer anonymously something that can be very, very helpful to the future discipleship methodology of a church. And so let's kind of sell this a little further, Joel, with getting into the nitty-gritty of the features. Fly by this fairly quickly because we've mentioned some of this already.
Yep. So once we have, as a team, once we've understood the big picture, you zoom out and say, at the end of this, what are we trying to understand? What key questions are we trying to get at the answers. Then, so we're in the business of curating questions. And so we have a lot of different questions that we have used and that we've modified. And so for every single question that we ask a congregant, we want it to be language that looks and feels like the culture of your church, that they would get it when they read it. And they say, oh yeah, I know what they're asking. And so every single question, though they may be asked similarly across churches, we want to make sure that the language is customized. As far as how we engage with it, it's increasingly, no surprise here, becoming more digital, so that we're engaging hopefully people who are doing a live stream instead of just, we're handing out pieces of paper in the in a worship gathering. As Greg and I talked about before, they are anonymous. In other words, we want whomever is, and they're branded, by the way, as Auxano, because it's really important for your people as they're answering the questions, for them to feel that there's a measure of safety, that my pastor is not going to directly read this if my name is attached to it. Now, we don't ask, most of them are anonymous. There's one form of survey that we invite them. It's optional if they want to put their name, but this is not their pastor who's going to be saying, boy, I saw Susie fill out that paper and turned it in. We want it to be, there to be a sense of confidentiality in that. It's really user friendly. We make sure that both on the mobile and on a tablet and on their computer, that it's going to look good, it's going to feel good. And Kevin, I think earlier asked a question about how do you garner more participation? And so to that, we're going to develop a plan that works specifically for your church. And so we're sometimes it's going to be deployed one way for one church. And even some churches have multiple services that may have different demographics in it. And so we want to just think through those. Those are all the types of things that we ask. We pepper our churches with lots of questions so that we understand the context in which they will be taken, whether it's taken during a worship gathering. I mean, that, to be honest, that's when we see that's a hard pill for some pastors to swallow, to give up Sunday morning programming time. But we have seen dramatic results when there's actually time taken out of a worship gathering to invite participation in that. And
Joel, by the way, Joel, just so we don't scare everybody, we are still talking about surveys that can be taken in under 10 minutes.
Correct.
So it's not giving up the whole service. It's just we encourage that, just so that we level set expectations there. Yep.
And Joel, also to ping off of what you were saying on the user friendly and the high percentage participation rate. I know that one of the questions was asked. Sometimes in surveys, two things happen. You get a very small percentage of the constituents to actually take the survey. Mm-hmm. That small percentage is typically somebody who wants to share something or say something. They have something that they want to put out there, so they're inclined to do it. And the marginalized or the larger percentage are overlooked. And even in many surveys, they consider a successful survey if 5-10% of the organization actually takes the survey. Our beta Church Next survey, we did, one of the pastors executed last week, week before last, there was 1,000 of the congregants that this is a primarily African-American church, where 1,000 of the congregants responded to the survey like that because of the user-friendly, anonymous, and that intentionality, that focus. And it's even higher when it's done as a part of a weekend worship service.
Yeah, and actually, Jim, we worked with a church, I want to say it was in Texas, I can't remember exactly where they said, we actually have a bilingual congregation. Yep. And so is there the opportunity, they said, is there an opportunity to have this translated in Spanish? And we said, sure. Yeah, let's do that, so that we've got both it offered in English and in Spanish. Because at the end of the day, we're asking whether you've attended that church for 2 months or you've attended that church for 25 years, we need to hear. And so we provide some coaching even for how the church can set that up to be more inclusive, to get as many of responses as possible.
Let me just kind of close this section out, Joel,
Yeah.
by saying that on a couple of questions, I think I can kind of answer them quickly. Somebody asked, are surveys designed for church leadership as well as the congregation? The answer is absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's actually built into some of our processes as Auxano consultants anyway. We go in and do kind of a quick snapshot of leadership at the church. And so, yeah, we do that often, and that's something that obviously can be custom designed for what you want to hear from your leadership. But sometimes we'll actually survey leadership. I'm in a situation right now where we're surveying a round of leadership before we even roll out the rest of the survey to the rest of the congregation. Someone else asked, can surveys be not anonymous for the purpose of helping people with their spiritual growth? And I would say, sure, let's talk about it. I mean, again, hopefully you've heard the posture from us is that we bring all of our experience and expertise to a custom conversation. So if your church says, hey, guys, I wish you guys could change the survey like this, whatever that means, whether it's let's have people put their names on as a required part of the survey, or let's ask more questions or fewer questions or whatever. This is why we want to be in a conversation with you, because we really can tailor it almost any way you want to tailor it, and then analyze it along with you when we get the results. One more thing on this slide, just real quick, is we've actually, both for churches and for faith-based nonprofits, done confidential interviews sometimes with their stakeholders. And probably many of you are familiar with this, but even beyond just sort of the digital survey or click the box on the page thing, sometimes it's very important for face-to-face, in-person, or Zoom interviews with stakeholders one at a time, so that they feel like not only are they being heard or listened to, but also that they don't have to respond to a question like in a think tank or in a polling group, sitting around a conference table. So it's literally either one individual at a time or one couple or household at a time, which can also be very fruitful, again, depending on what you're trying to ask for in terms of feedback. Okay, you can tell that we're kind of trying to sell you on this idea because we believe in it so much. And so that's why we're like, hey, come on, we're going to give you all the benefits of this because we want to work with you. Auxano Assessments, again, using the experience of the men and women we work with, you've heard it. We know how to design the questions with and for you. You've got a bunch of people that have been in ministry for multiple years. The third-party objectivity thing not only ensures high response rate, but also that people will feel confident that they can say whatever they have to say in terms of candor. We're strategic outsiders, and we'll give you observations and recommendations for go forward action. Like we say, okay, in light of this is what we suggest you do. And this is no sort of quick download of some results. This is an extraordinarily thorough 40 to 50 page report, because even if someone makes a comment, we give every church leader everything that anyone said, so that there's no holding back. We're not filtering through things and only showing you some things and not others. You get the full scoop in terms of how your people responded. So we wanted you to just know that we believe in it. We literally are trying to kind of sell this idea to you because we've seen it work so beautifully. I have most pastors that I work with say the best money I've spent in a decade was the money that we spent on that survey. And again, we're not talking about extraordinary costs either. We're just saying it's such a critical step that to not do it almost feels foolish to us, which is why we're kind of pleading with church leaders. Come on, let us help you with this, because it's a really, really helpful thing. And of course, we deliver all this stuff in person and walk through it with your leadership team. Okay, big announcement today. Talk about getting excited. This is one that Joel mentioned, a beta test. We're out of the beta. We're into the live thing. Here we go. Jim Randall, talk to us about why we're doing this, what this is, and what you're so excited about regarding the Church Next survey.
Yeah, this is the time, team. We are absolutely excited about the possibility and really the potential that the Church Next survey will help ministry leaders to, as I shared earlier, bridge that gap or shorten that gap between their own understanding or what they think or their perception and the reality of what may or may not be happening in the future. And so we're rolling out today in a very formal way, the Church Next survey. It's going to help you to think through those preferences that are future thought preferences for the ministry, for the church, so that you can plan that next season. I've talked time and time again before that many times as pastor leaders, we make our decisions based upon assumptions and anecdotal stories. And so the Church Next survey is going to give you empirical data to be able to pull that together and really kind of take a lot of the guesswork out. If you have not gone, go ahead, Greg. If you've not gone to churchnextsurvey.com, churchnextsurvey.com, see it at the bottom of this slide right here. I want to encourage you to do so. You may even do that while we're on the webinar here. I'd love for you to do it while we're on the webinar. It's a church-wide survey for your congregation. So to be super clear, if you purchase this survey, you will administer it with your congregation, even if you have not regathered meeting. And matter of fact, that church that I gave as an example was a church that has not returned to full in-person worship services yet, but yet they had 1,000 people within their congregation to take the survey last week. And obviously churches that are meeting in person that are part of the beta also having really high participation and engagement. It is a 5-minute anonymous survey where we really kind of walk through, how your members are going to feel about in-person worship going forward. What is in person? What's going to be online? That type of how does the economics going to affect the giving of people within your church moving forward, right? That's a big, big question. A lot of anxiety. We're doing a lot of generosity culture coaching right now because there's a fear of our sustainability as a church. And so wouldn't it be great to have an idea of what your people are thinking about in this space of giving and generosity? Once again, what's going to be the preferences for, there's some really good things that came out of this last year. There are some efficiencies and some effectiveness in ministry. Well, kind of finding out what interest may be remaining, right? What are maybe some of your members hoping will get back to normal? These are some key questions that are getting answered. It's really we spent months developing this survey with ministry leaders. It is really 12 simple questions, but it is a treasure trove of information that will help you as you plan the next season of ministry at your church. And so it is a church-wide survey for your church. But here's a really cool thing. Joel, help me out on this a little bit. So not only, correct me if I'm wrong here, Joel. So not only will they receive, when they have finished their 2-week window of their Church Next Summer survey, not only will they receive a report from their church, but they'll also receive a comparative report.
Correct.
That kind of does what? Help us, Joel. Help me understand exactly. Help them understand what else they're going to hear.
Yep. So right away after it's closed, within just a few days, we're going to export and get you a report of all of your congregation's responses. But then about every 60 days, as we have more and more churches participating, we're going to aggregate all the data, all the responses, and we're going to send it out so that then you've got your report and you can look at how your people answered and what their preferences are, and then you can compare with whatever the latest one of all the responses. So that not that you're comparing, but it's a little bit of a benchmark,
right?
Benchmark.
It is a benchmark. There are some things going different from East Coast to West Coast. There's difference from communities within the same state. It is great to have an understanding of maybe in the bigger picture how we're tracking. And so that's that's a valuable resource. And so we're looking forward to, and we're also looking forward for Auxano Assessments to push out some of those findings and some of the things that they're seeing as trending that are taking place. So when you go to that website, go ahead, Joe.
Well, Jim, even in our beta, we had some churches that are friends, and so we had several churches that piloted this, that did a beta round of it, and we had thousands of responses from those, which is even some nuggets that we've learned just from those initial participating churches.
I love it. I love it. And I can't wait for us to be able to share those resources, to be able to send some of those nuggets and even more a little bit further and broader. Okay, so here's the deal. You see the slide. We're not talking about, and by the way, Greg has done a great job of clarifying this. There are different levels of surveys that Auxano Assessments will be doing. So those levels may be something that is a quick survey like Church Next survey that is, it's still for your church, but it is a low cost, low barrier, but gives you an enormous amount of information. We do more deeper dives in assessments. We do some readiness. He kind of mentioned some of the campaign stuff. We do readiness. Church Next survey is a quick survey that you can execute within your local congregation. And look, come on, $199. I'm going to tell you right now, as you know, the privilege of leading Auxano, I'm not sure how long it's going to be $199. We believe that that price is going to go up after we get through kind of an initial release. I want to really challenge and encourage you. If you're remotely interested in this, grab this thing. You do not have to execute it today. So if you buy it today, you don't have to execute and administer the survey this weekend. We'll help work with you on scheduling when your survey would actually, the window that would be done. But let me encourage you to jump on that. And I really do believe that with the different timelines and the lifting of restrictions and the vaccination now that are beginning to take place, you know, we really do need to have a good understanding of what's around the corner. And I know from where I sit in the churches that I serve and the ministry leaders that I get the privilege to walk alongside of, this has already been just a valuable source of intel needed to make those decisions that you need to make moving forward. So let me encourage you, kind of jump on that. I'm going to kind of make no bones about it. This is a great price point, a great opportunity. If you had 5,000 people in your church, it's $199 to take this survey. If you have 100 people in your church, it's $199. It is a truly introductory price that we're putting at. A lot of our surveys are priced based upon church size, but this one we want the masses to have that accessibility to. So jump in with us on this. Greg, you want to kind of take us out? We want to answer any questions, maybe have a moment or two to answer one or two questions.
Absolutely.
Did
we hit the ones that are in the chat box, guys? Because I can't see it as well as you can. So I'm happy to answer anything that y'all want to put in the chat box right now. We won't run away, but we're at just coming up on about 47 minutes into our webinar.
Yeah.
We try to keep these under an hour. So if we've got a few more minutes of questions, we'll take them. And if not, we'll let you get back to whatever you're getting back to. So anything else that y'all want to ask?
Bob, Greg, looks like Bob said we did hit those questions that were in the chat box. So maybe there's one or two that we may have to circle back to, especially one on motivating the congregation to take the survey and making sure that you're not just hitting the people who have the loudest voice, but that we're getting even some of the marginalized. So I love the tools you guys have been putting out for things like that.
I did see someone just asked a question about if some of the questions can be customized. And I guess I just want to delineate for the Church Next survey, it's the same 12 questions across the board. And that's partly because of that benchmarking that we talked about. However, there is an option for a customized survey. And so if you'd want to talk about what does reentry, reopening look like for your church, or maybe it's beyond the reentry questionnaire. If there's any other topic that you have, we'd love to have a conversation about that.
Joel, to be clear on that, what you're saying is if they purchase the Church Next survey as is, it's kind of locked into the questions. However, they can have a direct conversation with you to do a modification on it, which would be an additional price point. It would cost more for them to modify it. So they could have a customized Church Next survey, but that would not be at $199. That would involve an additional fees.
Yep, correct.
Cool, super great. Great.
Hey, everyone, thank you so much. By the way, this is really easy to get a hold of us and have these conversations. As you can tell by Joel's posture. He is a pastor and really a coach of pastors. And so if you've got anything you want to spin, like maybe you even think it's a crazy idea, there's no way Auxano will ever do that. Don't think that. Just call Joel. You'll love talking to him. But even aside from that, auxano.com/assessments will get you more information. Obviously, the churchnextsurvey.com will get you more information. Whenever you meet somebody from Auxano, like Greg, Jim, or Joel, our emails are easy. It's greg@auxano.com or jim@auxano.com or joel@auxano.com. So it's really easy to get a hold of us. And our colleague and fair friend, Mr. Bob Adams, will also be making sure that you get lots of follow-up material from today's presentation, both what we talked about content-wise, as well as all those links, just in case you need a reminder down the road.